Hello folks, Jason Chrisman here at JC's Bees. It's the 25th of March and it's almost 60 degrees. This week looks like it's going to warm up. We're going to start getting our spring rains. I'm very excited about that because that's going to green everything up. But at the same time, with the weather cooperating today, it's an ideal time for me to get in and make sure that the bees have plenty of food. I'm not going to do an inspection. What I'm going to be checking is the sugar or the winter patties that I have on top of the frames. You see, this is the time of year when beekeepers think they've made it through winter and they start to celebrate, and then the weather gets cold again, the bees don't have food, or they started to raise a lot of brood because you've been feeding pollen patties too soon, and the cluster splits and then it gets cold and your bees die. Or they don't have enough food and your bees die. So this is a very critical time to make sure that your bees have food, and it's also a good time to not feed too much pollen. Everybody gets excited and says, I'm going to start feeding pollen sub, and then what happens is they start to raise a bunch of brood, and like I said, it gets cold, cluster splits because trying to keep the brood warm, and they die. So don't feed pollen sub in the hive yet. My thoughts on that are, if your bees are able to get out and fly and go get pollen from, say, the maple trees, which are producing pollen right now, then set out a dry feeder, a dry pollen feeder, out, away from the hives. Don't be feeding pollen sub in the hive. If the bees are able to leave the hive and go get pollen from the trees, then why shouldn't bees be able to leave the hive and go to the dry pollen sub feeder? In my mind, that's all the same kind of thinking versus putting the pollen sub in the hive, and when we have cold days or rainy days and they stay in there, that's all they're doing is eating that pollen sub. I don't like that. So I'm going to wait till it warms up a little bit more, and then I'll start feeding the pollen sub in the hive. So for now, we're going to be offering, been feeding these most of the winter. It's a Kelly winter patty, and what I'm going to do is probably take this as the last one, so I'm probably going to cut it down and get a few chunks out of it. But anyway, here's one of my stronger colonies, and you can see a piece of pollen patty here, or winter patty. You can see my sugar, which is rock hard, and you can see part of a winter patty back here. What I want to do is probably take this piece of winter patty up, move it to the center, take this piece, move it to the center, and maybe drag that one back this way a little bit, because the cluster is going to stay towards the center and not so much outside towards the edge. So I want to make sure that the food is right here and they're able to get to it. Now with these patties, you're not supposed to remove the paper. The bees chew all that away, and as you can see, that's worked fairly well. Just lay this right here on top of the bees. They'll move. Here, look at them eating that. Let's kind of move everything over a little bit. And I might not have to give this one any more winter patty. And I have my smoker gone, but I'm not using it yet. I did smoke them a little bit to get in here, but other than that. So I also just noticed minutes ago when I took this cover off, a couple drones walking around. So that means that before long, we'll be able to start our queen rearing. Very excited about that. We got bees coming up through here where they chewed a hole. So anyway, folks, the main purpose of this video is to make sure you keep your bees fed. I know it looks like a clustered mess right now. You got bees, you got paper, you got hard sugar, but this is how it works. You keep the food on top and don't switch your boxes around too soon. It's another mistake I see beekeepers make. So leave the boxes as they are. Keep putting food on top of the frames. Because I have such a mess on top of the frames, I haven't really did much of an inspection yet this year. My inspection pretty much consists of looking at the bees here on top. Everybody looks happy. Everybody looks healthy. I don't see any deformed wings. If I visually look for mites, now keep in mind I have a trained eye. I know what varroa mites look like. So it's going to be a little bit harder for a new beekeeper to say I don't see any mites because their eye is not trained to what a mite looks like. Everybody looks healthy though. So if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. It'd be appreciated. That'll help boost it in YouTube search ranks and make it easier for other beekeepers to find. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below and take time to subscribe. And make sure you click that little bell, and that will make sure you get notified whenever I release a video. Thanks again, folks.